My envious sister-in-law and her family accused me of taking her diamond ring. But when the truth was revealed, she wasn't prepared for the surprise. I, 29 female, have been married to my husband Jake, 31 male, for 5 years. We have a good relationship and a comfortable life. Jake has a sister, Karen, 32 female, who's been married to her husband, David, 34 male, for 8 years. Karen and I never really got along. From the day Jake introduced me to his family, Karen seemed to have a problem with me. At first, I thought it was just because she was protective of her brother, but as time went on, I realized there was more to it. I grew up in a middle-class family. My parents worked hard to provide for me and my siblings. We never had luxuries, but we had everything we needed. I went to college on scholarships and worked part-time jobs to pay for my expenses. After graduation, I got a job at a tech company and worked my way up. Karen, on the other hand, came from a wealthy family. She never had to worry about money and got everything she wanted. She went to an expensive private college and then married David, who also came from a rich family. Karen didn't work and spent her time shopping, going to spas, and attending social events. When Jake and I started dating, Karen made it clear that she didn't think I was good enough for her brother. She would make snide comments about my clothes, my job, and my background. She often tried to set Jake up with her rich friends, even though he was dating me. Despite Karen's attitude, Jake and I got married. Our wedding was simple but beautiful. We paid for it ourselves and had a small ceremony with close friends and family. Karen complained about everything at the wedding, from the food to the decorations. She even wore a white dress, which I chose to ignore to avoid drama. After we got married, Jake's career took off. He got promoted several times and started earning a good salary. We were able to buy a nice house and go on vacations. This seemed to make Karen even more jealous. She would constantly compare our lives to hers, always trying to one-up us. Last month, Jake's parents invited the whole family for a weekend at their lake house. I didn't want to go because of Karen, but Jake convinced me it would be good for family bonding. The first day went okay. We all arrived on Friday evening and had dinner together. Karen barely spoke to me, which was fine by me. On Saturday morning, we went for a swim in the lake. After lunch, Karen suggested we all play board games. While we were playing, Karen kept showing off her new diamond ring. She made a big deal about how expensive it was and how her dad had surprised her with it for their anniversary. I complimented the ring to be polite, but Karen just rolled her eyes at me. Later that afternoon, I decided to take a nap. I was tired from the drive and the swimming. I went to the guest room Jake and I were staying in and fell asleep. I woke up about an hour later to shouting. I went downstairs to find Karen screaming and crying. She was yelling that her diamond ring was missing. Everyone was trying to calm her down and help her look for it. Karen was turning the living room upside down, throwing cushions and looking under furniture. Suddenly, Karen pointed at me and shouted that I must have stolen her ring. She said I was jealous of her ring and wanted it for myself. I was shocked and denied it immediately. Jake defended me, saying I would never do such a thing. Karen insisted that I was the only one who had been alone in the house while everyone else was outside. She demanded that I empty my pockets and show her my bags. I was humiliated but did as she asked to prove my innocence. The ring wasn't there, but Karen wasn't satisfied. To my horror, David joined in and accused me of hiding the ring somewhere. He said I must have taken it out of jealousy and suggested searching our room. I couldn't believe what was happening. I looked to Jake's parents for support, but they seemed unsure. Jake's dad suggested we all search the house thoroughly. We spent hours looking everywhere, but the ring didn't turn up. As time passed, I could see doubt creeping into everyone's eyes. Even Jake's mom, who had always been kind to me, was giving me suspicious looks. By dinner time, the atmosphere was unbearable. Karen was still crying, and David was comforting her while glaring at me. Jake's cousins were whispering among themselves, and I could feel their accusing stares. The breaking point came when Jake's dad pulled Jake aside. I overheard him telling Jake to man up and either make me give the ring back or pay for it. He said the ring was worth thousands of dollars and Karen was devastated. Jake lost his temper. He shouted at his dad, saying he couldn't believe his own family would accuse me without any proof. He yelled that I was innocent and that Karen probably just misplaced the ring. This led to a heated argument with everyone taking sides. I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't believe this was happening. I had never stolen anything in my life, and now I was being treated like a criminal by my husband's family. In the middle of the argument, Jake grabbed my hand and said we were leaving. He told his family he was disappointed in all of them for jumping to conclusions and treating me this way. We packed our bags quickly and left, despite his parents' protests. We left the lake house that evening. The car ride home was tense, though Jake tried to comfort me. He kept apologizing for what had happened, saying he couldn't believe his family would treat me that way. I was numb, too overwhelmed to even process my feelings. The humiliation, the anger, and the sadness were all tangled up inside me. I couldn't understand how everything had gone so wrong. When we got home, Jake's phone was flooded with messages. His family had started a group chat where Karen and David were doubling down on their accusations. Karen was demanding we pay for the ring, while David accused Jake of being blind to my jealousy. Jake blocked their numbers that night, saying he needed a break from their toxicity. I was grateful for his support, but I could see how much it hurt him. He loved his family, and this situation was tearing him apart. The next week was a nightmare. Karen took to social media, posting vague but pointed statuses about betrayal and jealousy. She even implied I had stolen her ring, though she didn't name me outright. Some of Jake's extended family members reached out, urging us to make peace by paying for the ring. It was infuriating. Paying would mean admitting to something I didn't do, and I knew that if we gave in, Karen would hold it over me forever. Then, 2 weeks after the incident, we got an unexpected call from Jake's cousin, Leah. She asked to meet me in person, saying she had something important to share. I was hesitant, but Jake encouraged me to hear her out. The next day, I met Leah at a small cafe. She looked nervous, glancing around as if she expected someone to be listening. "I know what happened to Karen's ring," Leah said, her voice barely above a whisper. She told me that she'd heard something shocking from Olivia, who was dating Lucas, David's best friend. Olivia had confided in Leah that David was the one who had taken the ring. Apparently, David and Lucas had gotten involved with a loan shark to fund a business venture. Instead of investing the money, they had blown it on gambling and partying in Las Vegas. When it was time to repay the loan, they were broke. In desperation, David stole Karen's ring and sold it to partially cover the debt. He had then staged the ring's disappearance and pinned the blame on me. I was stunned. Part of me was relieved to know the truth, but another part of me was furious. David had let me endure humiliation and accusations to cover up his own crime. Leah said she felt guilty for keeping the secret, but didn't know how to handle it. I thanked her for telling me and assured her I would handle it carefully. When I got home, I told Jake everything. At first, he was doubtful. He couldn't believe his brother-in-law would do something so despicable. But as we talked, the pieces began to fit. David's nervous behavior, his eagerness to blame me. It all made sense. Jake decided we needed more evidence before confronting David. He hired a private investigator, who was able to track down the pawnshop where David had sold the ring. The PI even got security footage showing David making the sale. With all the evidence in hand, Jake called a family meeting. He told everyone it was time to clear the air about the ring. Karen and David showed up, probably expecting me to confess. Instead, Jake laid out the evidence piece by piece. The bank statements, credit card charges from Las Vegas, and the pawnshop footage. He even had Lucas on speakerphone, reluctantly confirming the story. The room was silent as Jake revealed the truth. Karen looked confused, then horrified. David turned pale and stammered out a weak defense, but it was too late. He finally admitted to stealing the ring, saying he had planned to buy it back once he had the money. Karen burst into tears, screaming at David for betraying her. Jake's parents were furious, apologizing profusely to me for doubting my integrity. David left the house in disgrace. Karen, devastated, said she couldn't stay married to him after what he'd done. She filed for divorce a week later. Jake's parents went out of their way to make amends, inviting us over for dinners and calling to check on me. Jake and I decided to set boundaries moving forward, ensuring we wouldn't get dragged into any more family drama. In the weeks following the family meeting, the fallout from David's betrayal continued to ripple through Jake's family. Karen, devastated by the truth, moved in with her parents while she began divorce proceedings. She was still heartbroken over losing her ring, which the loan shark had already sold. However, she also seemed genuinely remorseful for how she had treated me during the ordeal. Karen reached out to me about a week after the meeting. Her voice was shaky and uncertain, a stark contrast to the confident, sometimes cutting demeanor I was used to. She apologized for accusing me, admitting that her jealousy and insecurity had clouded her judgment. "I was so wrapped up in my own feelings," she said, "that I didn't even consider how much I was hurting you. I'm sorry." I could hear the sincerity in her voice, and while it didn't erase the pain of what had happened, it felt like a step in the right direction. I told her I forgave her but made it clear that rebuilding trust would take time. She said she understood and promised to work on herself and her relationships with others, including me. Meanwhile, Jake and I focused on moving forward. The ordeal had strengthened our relationship, reinforcing the importance of trust and communication. We also agreed that, while we would maintain relationships with his family, we needed to prioritize our own well-being and boundaries. Jake's parents made a concerted effort to repair their relationship with me. His mother, who had been visibly shaken by the revelation, started reaching out more frequently, inviting us for dinners and family gatherings. Jake's father, who had initially suggested we pay for the ring, apologized directly to me, saying he regretted doubting my integrity. "I was wrong, and I see that now," he said. You've shown more grace than I could have expected, and I'm sorry for putting you through that. Their efforts were appreciated, and while it would take time to fully mend the rift, I felt reassured that they valued me as part of the family. As for David, his life took a downward turn after the truth came out. He moved into a small apartment and lost his job when his employer discovered his gambling habits and debt. From what we heard through the grapevine, he had started attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings and was working to rebuild his life. While I couldn't forgive him for what he'd done to me and Karen, I hoped he could turn his life around for the sake of his kids. Karen, for her part, made good on her promise to work on our relationship. She started inviting me out for coffee or lunch, just the two of us. At first, our conversations were awkward, but as time went on, we found common ground. She opened up about the pressures she'd felt growing up in a wealthy family and her struggles with insecurity. I shared Karen's of my own challenges, and slowly, we began to build a more genuine connection. The experience also brought me closer to Jake's cousin Leia, who had been instrumental in uncovering the truth. Leia admitted she wished she had spoken up sooner but was glad she could help set things right. We started having regular girls' nights out, often joined by other cousins from Jake's family. It was a small but meaningful reminder that not everyone in the family had doubted me. A few months later, Jake was offered a promotion that required us to relocate to another state. After much discussion, we decided to take it. It was an opportunity for a fresh start, away from the lingering awkwardness of the ring incident. Jake's family was supportive of the move, though some expressed sadness at our departure. Karen, in particular, seemed disappointed but said she understood our need for space. Before we left, Karen gave me a heartfelt farewell. "I'm going to miss you," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you for giving me another chance. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm going to prove to you that I can be a better sister-in-law, and maybe even a friend." Her words felt genuine, and I told her I appreciated her effort. We promised to stay in touch, and she even joked about visiting us in our new city. As we settled into our new home, Jake and I reflected on everything that had happened. The ring incident had been a nightmare, but it also brought us closer together and taught us valuable lessons about standing up for ourselves and setting boundaries. We were determined to build a life centered on trust, love, and mutual respect, free from the shadows of past family dramas. Looking back, I realized how much I had grown through the experience. I had learned to trust my instincts, stand up for myself, and value the relationships that truly mattered. Life is unpredictable, but with Jake by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. Here's to new beginnings, and to leaving the past where it belongs.